I don't train to look good. I train to feel good. Longevity is more important to me than looking good at the beach. When you train to look good, it's like you're standing in quicksand. It's tough to get out. You will never be satisfied with how you look. I've been there and I know what it's like, and it's not fun. I first started training to get better at sports. I wanted to be better at basketball, so I started working out, and it worked. Within 3 years, I was the strongest kid at my high school. I went to Myers Park High School in Charlotte, North Carolina, just like Drake May did of the New England Patriots. And then after high school, I went on to college at UNC Chapel Hill, again, just like Drake May, and I continued working out. There is when my training slowly transformed from getting better at sports and athleticism to just getting stronger in the gym. By the time I graduated, I was working 60 hours a week, only getting paid for 40, and my time was limited. I wasn't able to play basketball like I used to for several years. So then the gym became my home. It was easy. I could just go in there and work out. Well, after a while, your strength plateaus and it slows down. There's just only a certain amount that your body is going to be able to lift. It's just a sad truth of life. And when that hit, I started getting into bodybuilding. I always looked up to Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, some of the top guys in movies and in bodybuilding. And for me, I wanted to look like them. Well, I started to definitely get closer to, what I thought looked good for myself. But unfortunately, I had to sacrifice a lot of things. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. When you are going to be or trying to be the top of anything, any specialty, like bodybuilding, you have to sacrifice. And unfortunately, you don't get much of a reward. Only the top guys are the ones that are making any kind of money. And those top guys have genetics that you and I just never will have. It doesn't matter how much hormones we take or how much money we spend, we will never look like those top bodybuilders. It's just not in our cards. And when you finally realize that, then you can stop chasing that dream and instead start focusing on what really matters. Now, if you love bodybuilding and you love working out, that's awesome. I mean, I know it, I did it, I loved it. But the problem is, it becomes very addicting. And when you chase vanity and looks, you're never going to be satisfied. I was 4% body fat at one time. I felt horrible. I had to diet down for 12 weeks, hardly ate any kind of food at the end just to get the last little bit off, just to say I did it. People will often say that it takes discipline and determination to be able to do that, and it does. But what they don't tell you is it's also really bad for your health. And you feel absolutely horrible. It's not sustainable. And unfortunately, when I got down to, I was about 220 pounds, at about 4% body fat. I never competed. I just didn't want to. I wanted to see how I could get. That it was more for me, not for competing. And when you get down to that low body fat and that type of muscularity that I had, you tend to always hold yourself to that standard. And unfortunately, that's just not sustainable. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap. Now, when I got into my early 30s, I started working for some supplement companies and I started traveling around the country and I got to meet, the top professional bodybuilders and strongmen in the world. And right away, you know, you just realize that you're not on their level and there's nothing you can do. At the time, I was 240 pounds, probably 8, 9% body fat. I'm only 5'11, so that's pretty big. Uh, but compared to those people, I just don't look like them. My muscle insertions, they're not theirs. There's just no way. You have guys that were 40 pounds lighter than me and looked bigger than me. It's just, it's not in my cards. And honestly, for me, I'm happy that it wasn't. I just wish that I hadn't spent so much time, you know, figuring that out. So everything changed for me when my son was born in my mid 30s. Then life really started to take on a different meaning. It was less about vanity and about how I looked, and it was more about being there for him. Plus, when you've got a newborn and a toddler, you hardly have time for anything. You're constantly trying to figure out your work schedule with your wife's work schedule, you know, what family members are going to come help out so you guys can get some sleep. It's hard. But at that point, that's when everything changed for me. And instead of lifting for myself, I started lifting for longevity. And that changed everything. It was more about, feeling good and not looking good. Now, don't get me wrong. I like being able to have a six pack, see my abs. I like it. But the one thing that I didn't realize until I started changing the way I was training was that when you diet and you do these extreme things and you sacrifice your health to look good, you actually make it harder for you to achieve your goals. You put in a huge amount of stress on your body, which releases the stress hormone cortisol, and that in turn will just wreck your body. So I started, training for function, started training to feel good, and I actually started looking leaner faster than I ever had before. I dialed in my diet. My diet wasn't, about what I was going to eat for the next 12 weeks. It was about what am I going to eat to give my body the energy that it needs to recover and to survive for the long haul. 39, I had a little setback, found out I needed neck surgery, got that taken care of, and then I got back into the game. And when I did that, I immediately went back to training more like an athlete and less like a bodybuilder. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't some movements that overlap between athleticism and feeling good and bodybuilding, because there definitely are. It's just the way you incorporate them into your training is what really matters. And I think once you find that nice, happy medium balance, everything works out. And ultimately, I believe that when you're training, you're accumulating different techniques that you can use. The longer you train, the more stuff you try out, the bigger your bag of tricks. And when you are faced with a specific situation, you're able to pull something out of your bag and have a successful workout. Like I said this in other videos, you're worn out from life, then maybe it's not a good idea to go and try to do sprints and box jumps and heavy, low bar squats or whatever it is. Instead, do some bodybuilding movements, get the muscles moving. Hypertrophy is important for longevity. As we get older, we lose muscle mass, and you need muscle mass. It's pretty simple. The more muscle you have, the stronger you're going to be. Do you need as much muscle as the top bodybuilders in the world? Definitely not. Once you get to a certain size, you start losing mobility and you start putting in enormous amounts of pressure on your heart and other internal organs. And unfortunately, that's why we're seeing a lot of professional bodybuilders die extremely young. And it's getting worse because the guys are carrying more weight. Your body doesn't differentiate between muscle weight and body fat. Your body thinks that when you weigh a certain amount, that it's going to have to work harder to survive. And that's when you get a host of problems. Most of the time, they're heart related. You've got some strokes and some other stuff, but ultimately you could argue that the strokes are definitely cardiovascular related as well too. So as I've gotten older, I've realized that, waking up and not hurting is more important than looking good in the mirror. I would rather be able to jump out of bed, get the day rolling, than crawl out of bed, barely be able to stand up, but be happy with what I see in the mirror. And I think the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is your mental state. Once you realize that you're training for a specific purpose and it's not to look good, then everything else falls in place. The pressure you put on yourself to be perfect goes away. And instead, you start enjoying your workouts. And that's the most important thing. Because if you don't enjoy working out, it's going to be hard to motivate yourself to go do it. And your family and your community need you strong. If you like this type of stuff, I talk about it more in my Training for Life series. And I'm going to continue going over more of these in the future. Training for life, that's the standard.